So welcome to 10 Good Minutes here at Solstice. We have today an interesting topic that we want to talk about. My name is Mike Colino. I'm the Director of Solution Delivery here at Solstice. I have with me Kelton Person. Kelton, give us a little bit about information about yourself here before we get started.
Hey, I'm Kelton. For Solstice, I was working in the energy trading industry, working as a .NET developer, doing a lot of heavy backend work. But I was always really interested in mobile, and I ended up here at Solstice.
Excellent. So thank you for your time today. So Kelton, we're coming off of sort of the heels of 2014 Express Day here at Solstice. And one of the things that, one of the really great ideas that came out of last year's Express Day was a product that we're now calling Mirror. And you actually came up with the idea of Mirror. Can you sort of explain what Mirror is?
So Mirror is a web service mocking tool. And really, it was designed to solve kind of two big issues that we've always had. One is that services go down and we need to continue to develop. And the other one is that services just don't exist sometimes. So what we developed was this tool that allowed us to mock up web service flows using one, a record mode, and two, a manual mode. And the record mode is used to solve the the slow services issue. And I should say slow and down service issue. Okay. And what it does is it allows you to enter an API URL, and what Mirror will do is generate a proxy URL for you. So this URL can be used just like any other URL. It works, and it proxies information from it to the actual real API. And when all that information comes back, we record it. So say that services go down. What we can do is just switch to a different mode called play mode, and we can play back those services. So no matter what, if the services go down, you can continue to develop. So the other issue is the non-existent services, and that happens a lot too. So what you can do is create services manually, and just like the recorded mode, it will automatically add those to the database, and you can play those back transparently.
Okay. So when you say create services manually, can you sort of walk through, is there sort of like an admin interface that we're talking about?
Sure. So Mirror has its own kind of web interface that you can use, and you can see all the requests that you have. You can see kind of all the users that are there. You can set ones to be active or non-active, but you can also go ahead and edit those, or you can create new ones. So all you do is have to click on create a new one, and you can just enter the information such as the request body, the headers, the query parameters, the path, whether the HTTP request method is get, post, put, option, all those type of good things. And you just click save, and it gets automatically added to the inventory, and you can use that anytime you'd like. You can activate it or deactivate it transparently.
So one of the things that I know that the sort of server-side scenarios that we work through a lot with some of our customers is very specific response codes that come from the server. Am I allowed to sort of simulate those as well? So not only sort of the HTTP codes that come back, but I can mock up a specific server response that would simulate some sort of error, something that would be hard for me to sort of test in any sort of test environment.
Sure. So you can, yes, you can definitely mock up any kind of error code. So a lot of times APIs will kind of have their own little error system in there. And because of that, the system's so flexible that you can say, okay, if it's in the body that says error code here, or say the HTTP status code is really the error code, you can simulate both of those transparently. And you can kind of tag those as being, server-side error as a node. So you can kind of have that additional flexibility to describe how you want your errors to be.
So Kelton, I know that a lot of development teams here at Solstice are already using Mirror. Can you tell me what some of the feedback's been so far?
So there's been a few issues with Mirror. One of them is that the matching logic can be a little bit strict or a little bit too loose. And what that means is that we actually have a matching method or algorithm to match those responses. And sometimes it's a little bit too strict. So say every time you make a request, you have a timestamp. That's going to change the request a little bit and create more and more responses. and that makes it a little hard to manage. There's ways to get around it, but it does make it harder. So what we kind of want to do there is working on making the logic tunable. So we can say, don't make this one part of the algorithm that determines uniqueness. So we're kind of working about how to make that configurable. Another feedback we've had is that the UI can be a little heavy at times, and we're working on making that a little bit lighter. So when we first started using the Mirror application, it was a few users using it, and we were doing a few requests, and then it worked pretty well at that point, but then we got tons of users and tons of requests, and we kind of did a few things to mitigate that, adding note sections and things like that. But we kind of want to make that lighter and a little bit more intuitive across, for all users.
So I think at this point, just understanding what Mirror is, I really start to see a bunch of use cases just starting to stack and pile up. Can you talk about some of the things that we're sort of using Mirror for right now?
Yes. So the most common way to use Mirror is just to deal with service outages. Services go down and people want to continue to develop. And that in itself is very, very powerful, but we're finding that it's actually getting used in different ways. So kind of recently, we've been working with kind of our QA departments to use Mirror. And I don't know if you've had this issue, but a common thing that happens is that a QA will put in a defect, a developer will say, I can't reproduce it, right?
That's never happened before.
Never happened before, right? So what we have our QA starting to do is say, hey, just record when this happens, and you have this complete isolated environment. So in the defect, just say, hey, this is my recording, and the developer can go ahead and come back and play that back transparently and just see exactly what happened. So that provides kind of a nice isolated environment. And what that's going to actually do for us is that we're going to get faster defect turnaround, and we're going to get a lot less hassle out of it.
So let's assume I'm an IT director at a large enterprise. We build enterprise applications or apps, mobile apps for the enterprise here. As an IT director, I love the idea of Mirror. At the same time, I want to, not up in the public cloud, but I want to sit behind my corporate firewall. Is that an option in terms of hosting?
Sure. So definitely, Mirror is very, very portable. It's actually built on what's called Ruby Rack middleware. And what that means is it can run on any rack compliant server, so like Thin and Mongrel. But a lot of enterprises actually don't have experience with these kind of Ruby servers, because Ruby's a little bit newer language. They kind of rely on things like Java. So what we did was we can compile this app against something called JRuby. And JRuby just means Java Ruby, and it'll actually run just like a standard Java WAR file. And then enterprises can use the standard tools that they love and trust, like Tomcat and JBoss, to do deployments. And then they also have other deployment options. We can make these into Linux containers, and they can just run isolated. So there's a lot of different options for deploying here. And so definitely you can run this behind your own corporate firewall, no problem.
Okay, great. So let's assume that I do that. I'm still the IT director at a large enterprise. We get the Mirror solution installed behind the firewall. I want to start running my teams in parallel, server side, client side. What do I need to do in terms of actionable first steps once everything's installed?
So you need to do very, very little. So for your client side team to begin working, you actually need nothing. You need no server side code written, because what they can start doing is manually mocking up these services. So it would probably be helpful to have some kind of service definitions about what you want to do. But that's really the minimum you need. And then that allows the client-side team to continue working. And while the server-side team develops the APIs, gets the databases running, whatnot, they can do that. The client-side team can work, and everybody can work at their maximum velocity without impeding each other. When they're ready to integrate, they just replace the mock URL with their actual API URL, and it should work seamlessly.
That's great. So we're a year removed from Solstice Express Day 2013. Mirror is becoming more and more popular here internally with our development teams. What does the future hold for Mirror?
So Mirror is very, very extensible. There's so much data that we have here, so we can kind of do a bunch of different things. One thing I would like to see is being able to visualize web service flows a little bit better. And what that means is you often get a lot of API documentation, and that code is, or that documentation is usually very verbose and not very fun to look at, and it's not super expressive. So what we could do is actually visualize what's going on in real time, and that can serve as documentation. So imagine this scenario where I'm a new developer or I'm a new QA, and I want to come on to this team, and I have to look at all this documentation and figure out how it works. What if you could just use the application, look on the website, the web application, and look exactly, I'm making this service with these parameters and these parameters. You instantly know how the application works, and there's a much faster ramp up time for bringing new people on, and there's much less hassle.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for your time today. Thanks for coming up with a great idea and building a great first step in terms of the tool. Again, it's gaining a lot of popularity here at Solstice internally, and I'm sure it'll be very popular with our clients as well.
All right.
So for Mike and Kelton here at Solstice, thank you for another good 10 minutes.